Have you ever noticed that the more you open up to family, the more complicated things seem to get? You start out with the best intentions. You want to be honest. You want to stay close. You want to feel connected. And for many of us, that means sharing stories, feelings, plans, memories, struggles. We think that opening our hearts will keep us bonded to the people we love. But then something shifts. The more you share, the less peaceful you feel. It's not because your family doesn't care. They do, often too much. But love, especially family love, comes tangled with emotions, expectations, and opinions some louder than others. And when you put everything out on the table, you're not just inviting understanding. You're also opening the door to judgment, worry, control, and sometimes even resentment. I used to think full honesty was the golden rule. If I just told my kids everything about my health, my finances, my thoughts, my plans, they'd feel trusted, and I'd feel supported. But as the years went on, I learned something else, something quieter and harder to explain. Not every truth needs to be spoken aloud, and not because those truths are wrong or shameful, but because your peace matters. Maybe more than ever. After all you've lived through, after everything you've navigated to get here, you've earned the right to choose silence when it serves you. So today, I want to talk, not lecture. Just talk about 5 things I believe are better kept to yourself after 65. Not to be secretive, but to be wise. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling emotionally drained or wished you had kept something to yourself, then this message is for you. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm your host, Dr. Jonathan Reed, and this channel is a place for men and women over 65 who want to live the years ahead with intention, strength, and quiet joy. We're not here to argue. We're here to reflect. And if this resonates with you, I'd be honored if you joined our community by hitting the subscribe button below. Now, let's get started with the first quiet truth that's worth protecting. We're told from an early age that honesty is the best policy, especially with family. That includes money. Be transparent, they say. Don't leave any surprises. And at first, that advice feels solid. After all, you want your kids to be prepared, right? You want them to know you've planned ahead, that everything's in order. You want to avoid chaos later. But here's a truth. Very few people will say out loud, revealing your entire financial situation too soon can quietly start eroding your freedom. Let me introduce you to someone, Frank. He's 79, a retired high school principal living in Flagstaff, Arizona. Frank is meticulous, thoughtful, and practical. A few years ago, thinking he was doing the responsible thing, he called a family meeting. He brought in printouts of his retirement accounts, his savings, his home value, even his funeral plans. He explained exactly how his assets would be divided someday. He meant it as a gesture of trust and love. What followed wasn't exactly what he expected. At first, there were nods of approval. A few, "Thanks for sharing, Dad." But then came the questions. Why are you keeping such a big house? Wouldn't it make sense to move to a senior community? Are you sure that vacation fund isn't a bit excessive? Shouldn't we sell the cabin now, before the market shifts? And just like that, Frank realized something. Now that his money was out in the open, so were his choices. Every dollar he spent felt like it came with a shadow. A vacation, a new recliner, even a nicer pair of shoes. They suddenly triggered feedback. He wasn't asking for permission, but it started to feel like he needed it. It wasn't malice. It was love, just too much of it. His children meant well, but the dynamic had changed. Here's the hard part. Once you fully open that financial curtain, it's almost impossible to close it again. And even the kindest families can fall into subtle power plays without realizing it. In more unfortunate cases, money draws out long-lost relatives, passive-aggressive comments, or interest that's less about you and more about what you might leave behind. This doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare. You absolutely should. Have a will, set up a power of attorney, choose someone you trust to handle things when needed. But that's about planning, not pre-disclosing. And those are two very different things. Privacy isn't selfish. It's a form of protection. You deserve the freedom to live your life, spend your savings, and make choices without an invisible audience watching over your shoulder. So, consider this. Share only what truly needs to be shared when the time is right and with people who have proven they respect your boundaries. Not just your money, but you. Because once finances become a family topic, you may find yourself having to defend decisions no one else should be judging in the first place. Let's be real. After 65, Our bodies have a few more squeaks, cracks, and surprises than they used to. That's normal. You wake up with a stiff shoulder. Your knees complain when the weather shifts. Sleep comes and goes. You start to forget what it was like to wake up without a single ache. And when you love your family, it's only natural to mention it. You figure they care, they'll want to know. You casually say, "My hip's been acting up again." Or, "I got a little dizzy yesterday after lunch." You're not looking for sympathy, just sharing life, right? But here's what we often forget. What feels like small talk to us can sound like a siren to them. Let me tell you about Joe. He's 77, a former postman in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with a dry wit and a stubborn streak. Joe's still sharp, still mobile, still doing his own grocery runs and yard work. But one afternoon, over coffee with his daughter, he casually mentioned that he'd been having a little chest tightness after his morning walks. He didn't mean to start a panic, but by dinner, she had him scheduled for a stress test, had dropped off a blood pressure monitor, and was texting him every morning to ask if he was still feeling tight. Soon, she started chiming in on his diet. Then came the unsolicited conversations about assisted living, just in case. Now, Joe appreciates his daughter. He knows she means well, but something changed in their relationship that week. Suddenly, he felt like he had to filter what he said, that everything was being measured, analyzed, interpreted, and that sense of being seen as fragile even, though he wasn't started to wear on him. That's the risk. The more we share every little health concern, the more our family starts seeing us not as whole, active adults, but as someone declining. They love you. But love, mixed with fear, can lead to overprotection, hovering, nagging, even taking over decisions you'd rather make yourself. Of course, if there's something serious going on, if you've been diagnosed with a condition that impacts your daily life, or you're struggling with real limitations, you absolutely should speak up. Let your family support you when it counts. But not every creaky knee needs a spotlight. Because here's the hard truth. When you share everything, even the small stuff, you can unintentionally shape a version of yourself that doesn't reflect who you truly are. You might feel mostly strong and capable, but your loved ones start to see only the symptoms. That perception has a way of sticking, and it can lead to them making decisions for you instead of with you. So before you bring up that sore back or tired legs, ask yourself, am I sharing this to feel connected? Or will this open a door to worry and interference I don't want? It's not about bottling things up. It's about choosing when, how, and with whom you share. Your doctor? Yes. Your health journal? Sure. But your family doesn't need a daily symptom report unless you need their help. Protecting your peace means preserving how others see you not as someone fading, but as someone still fully present. You are more than your aches, more than your diagnoses. You're a man with routines, opinions, humor, and purpose. Don't let the little discomforts dominate the story you tell or the one your family starts to believe. If you've lived past 65, chances are you've seen your fair share of family tension, siblings who don't speak, old resentments that surface at the worst moments, arguments over money, parenting, politics, or things so small you can't even remember how they started. And at this stage of life, it's easy to feel the pull to jump in. You've got wisdom, you've got perspective, you've seen how these stories play out. You want to help, you want to fix, you want to offer the right words to make everything better. But here's the truth I've learned, and I hope you'll take it to heart. Getting involved, even with the best intentions, can quietly cost you your peace. Let me tell you about someone I know, Robert. He's 82, a retired accountant from Birmingham, Alabama. He's always been the family rock. Dependable, reasonable, kind. One Thanksgiving, he noticed that his daughters, Erica and Melanie, are barely speaking. He thought he was helping when he gently pulled Melanie aside and said, "Maybe you could be a little more understanding with your sister. She's going through a lot." That one sentence sparked a wildfire. Melanie felt judged. Erica found out and felt embarrassed. Suddenly, Robert, the man who had always held the family together, was being avoided by both. He wasn't trying to take sides. He wasn't trying to cause trouble, but he did. Not because he was wrong, but because family conflict rarely responds to logic. It responds to emotion. And once you insert yourself, you become part of the tension, whether you meant to or not. Even a passing comment like, "Maybe the kids should help clean up more," or "You could be a little more patient with your husband," can echo longer than you intended. In your mind, it's helpful advice. In theirs, it's judgment, criticism, taking sides. You may mean to calm the storm, but you'll be remembered as the thunder that made it worse. And the truth is, the older we get, the more important it becomes to choose our peace over our participation. You don't need to mediate every argument. You don't have to attend every emotional fire drill. You are allowed to step back. The wisest thing you can say in a moment of family tension is something like, "I trust you all to figure this out. I'm here if you need me, but I don't want to take sides. I love you both. Let me know how I can support you without getting in the middle." This isn't disengagement. This is maturity. This is self-protection. Because once your name gets attached to a family argument, even for a good reason, people start to associate you with the problem. And that can leave scar zones that last longer than the disagreement itself. You've lived long enough to know that most family rifts resolve, or don't, in their own time. Your job now isn't to fix it, it's to stay steady, to be the calm in the chaos, not another wave in the storm. That doesn't make you uncaring, it makes you wise. So, the next time drama comes knocking at your door, pause, breathe, ask yourself, will this help them or just hurt me? You've earned your quiet. You've earned your seat at the edge of the room where peace lives. Don't trade that for a front row seat to someone else's conflict. If you've made it into your late 60s, 70s, or 80s, you've probably gathered a few regrets along the way. That's part of living a full life. Maybe you wish you'd spent more time traveling. Maybe you passed on a career opportunity because family came first. Maybe there were things you wanted to say, but didn't. Paths you could have taken, but didn't. We all carry those quiet what-ifs. At this stage, those memories come back in waves when we're walking the dog, sipping coffee, or watching a younger generation chase dreams we once had. And it's natural to want to share them, maybe as a story, maybe as a lesson, maybe just because they've been sitting inside your chest for too long. But here's something most of us don't realize until it's too late. Sharing your regrets too openly, especially with family, can quietly wound the people who love you most. Let me give you an example. A man named Harolda, retired Navy cook from Portland, Maniance told his son over lunch, "Sometimes I wish I hadn't settled down so young. I always wanted to see Europe." He didn't mean anything by it. Just a thought, said between bites of chowder. But his son didn't hear, "I love you, and I've had a good life." He heard, "You held me back." That's the tricky thing about regret. It can sound like rejection to the person listening. When you say, "I wish I'd gone back to school," your daughter might hear, "Being home with you wasn't fulfilling." When you say, "I should have taken that job in Denver," your son might think, "So you weren't happy where I grew up." You're just reflecting. They're internalizing. It's not your fault, and it's not theirs either. It's the emotional gravity of love. They want to know you're content, and even a passing comment can leave them wondering if they were somehow the reason for your sadness. There's another layer to this, too. When you speak about the past too often, what didn't happen, what went wrong, what might have been, people may start seeing you as someone stuck there, someone who's no longer living fully in the present. They may pull back, not out of judgment, but out of discomfort. They don't know how to respond. They might think you're unhappy. They may begin treating you with caution or pity, when what you really need is connection and normalcy. Your regrets are real, your feelings are valid, but that doesn't mean they all need to be spoken aloud, especially not around people who will carry your words differently than you intended. So what can you do instead? Instead of saying, "I wish I had," try saying, "I've learned a lot from the life I've lived." That one shift takes the sting out of it. It holds the truth without the burden. It allows you to express your depth without unintentionally causing someone else to question their worth in your story. And if you do want to process deeper regrets, talk with someone who has the emotional distance to hear it clearly, a counselor, a longtime friend, or even a journal, someone who can receive it as your experience, not their responsibility. You don't have to fake happiness, but you can protect the emotional space between you and your loved ones. Because in the end, peace doesn't come from fixing the past. It comes from making peace with it, quietly, privately, with grace. We've all heard the advice, be open about your plans. Don't leave your family guessing. Talk to your kids about your will so there's no confusion later. And in theory, that sounds smart, responsible, fair. But here's what no one talks about. Sharing the fine print of your estate too early or too often can quietly create distance, tension, and unspoken pressure. Let me introduce you to Eleanor and her husband Richard, both in their early 80s, living just outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. They've raised 3 kids, stayed married 55 years, and built a modest but meaningful life. Nothing flashy, but full of love. Wanting to do the right thing, Eleanor decided to have a family meeting. She laid everything out: who would get the house, how her savings were divided, and which grandchild would inherit her antique piano. She hoped it would bring comfort and clarity. Instead, it brought opinions. Their eldest daughter, Rachel, began questioning the percentages. Their middle son, who lived nearby, suggested selling the house now, while the market's still strong. The youngest, always quiet, said nothing but grew strangely distant in the weeks after. And Eleanor, she said to me, I felt like they stopped seeing me as their mother and started seeing me as a spreadsheet. She didn't mean to trigger comparison, resentment, or entitlement. But once you reveal who's getting what, especially if it's not perfectly equal, emotions surface. Even in the best families, especially when expectations meet reality, some kids feel overlooked. Others feel guilty. Some feel a sense of ownership over things that are still yours. And some suddenly get very interested in your lifestyle choices. You're going on a cruise? Shouldn't you be saving that? Why remodel the kitchen if the house is going to be sold? Is it really necessary to buy a new car at your age? You see where this is going. Once people know the plan, they often feel entitled to weigh in on how you live in the meantime. Not because they're greedy, though sometimes they are, but because information, once shared, changes relationships. And it's hard to go back. That's why it's so important to remember this. You absolutely should have an estate plan. You should appoint a trusted executor or power of attorney. You should have clear legal documents in place. But that does not mean you need to hand your kids a detailed breakdown of who gets what and when. Your will is not a family negotiation. It's your final act of generosity, handled your way, on your timeline. And if someone only shows concern when inheritance is involved, you may need to ask yourself if their concern is about you or your assets. Protecting your estate isn't just about locking up paperwork. It's about protecting your freedom to spend, to enjoy, to decide, without invisible strings attached. You've spent your whole life giving your time, your attention, your care. These years, they're for you. Live them with dignity, with confidence, and without feeling like every decision needs group approval. Your peace of mind is worth more than anyone's opinion. There's a kind of peace that only comes with age. You've earned it not through perfection, but through perseverance, through showing up, through staying strong, through loving others even when it was hard. But here's the truth: no one tells you that peace is fragile. And if you're not careful, even the people you love most can chip away at it. Not because they mean to, but because they're living their lives, and your honesty, your openness, your willingness to share everything can sometimes invite in more than support. It can invite noise, opinions, guilt, over-involvement, pressure. That's why now, more than ever, you must become the guardian of your own calm, not by shutting people out, but by choosing wisely what you let in. You don't owe the world your every detail. You don't have to explain every choice, every ache, every thought. You've lived a life full of giving to your children, your spouse, your work, your friends. But this next chapter, it's about preserving what matters most: your mental clarity, your emotional steadiness, your sense of privacy, your quiet joy. That doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means respecting your inner world enough to protect it. So, as you walk into the years ahead, ask yourself, what truths give me strength when I keep them to myself? What conversations leave me feeling more drained than understood? What peace am I willing to protect even if it means staying silent sometimes? Because peace, at this stage, is not a luxury. It's a boundary, a choice, a daily practice. And just as you once protected your family by working hard, showing up, being steady, it's time to protect yourself, too. So let me leave you with this. You don't need to justify your joy. You don't need to defend your independence. And you certainly don't need to explain your boundaries. You've earned this, and we're with you. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to leave a comment below. What's one thing you're choosing to keep just for yourself from now on? Your wisdom might be the exact message someone else needs to hear. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. We're building a community of thoughtful, grounded, and resilient seniors who know that aging doesn't mean fading. It means refining what matters. Until next time, take care of your heart, take care of your peace, and never forget, you've earned it.